We are now recording. Welcome. My name is Jennifer Wetham, and I am a program administrator at the State Board for Community and Technical Colleges. My expertise is faculty development in assessment, teaching, and learning, and we'll be doing formal introductions in just a moment. But I first wanted to just let people know that we do have two interpreters on the call today. They are Janine Lester and Tracy Smith. And so Janine, I understand, is translating first, and they will switch, and then Tracy will take over. When Janine is translating, if you want to, you'll want to keep her video primary on your screen. So to do that, you're going to want to pin her video. And we do have how-to instructions, and my colleague Alyssa Sells will repost. Oh, she's posting beautiful instructions right there in the chat. And I was just wondering, Ray, would you be willing to just quickly go over the guidelines one more time for speaking to make sure that we are being respectful of how to best practices?
Sure, thank you. My name is Ray Bate, and I teach ASL at South Puget Sound Community College. So the rule of thumb for working with interpreters is to have one person speak at a time. Raise your hand, identify your name of who's speaking, so that the interpreter then can identify what voice is being represented. If the movement and conversation is too quick and it ping-pongs back and forth, we will not be able to follow who's speaking and when. By breaking in between individuals speaking, we'll know as the call transitions who is speaking and when they're speaking, okay? To avoid crosstalk. Thank you.
Ray, thank you, and thank you so much for educating us. I really appreciate this. I also have the captioning turned on, so hopefully that is also useful. So with that, I am going to get us started. Today is a meeting of the World Languages faculty who teach world languages across our Washington State CTC system. And what we'd like to do today is begin to uncover the problems of practice for faculty who teach world languages across our state CTC system. And we really want to know, what can we begin to solve or address today in this meeting as faculty share what they're doing, and also some longer term issues that we can focus on in future meetings. So the facilitators today are me and my colleague Alyssa Sells. She is a faculty developer as well in our e-learning department. And we are also honored that we have a content expert. Elodie Goodman is the Dean of Social Science, Accounting, Economics, and Human Services at Spokane Falls. And she is a very experienced teacher of French, and she has lots and lots of experience teaching online. So Elodie, I'd love it if you could just say a few words about your experience and anything else you'd like to say.
Well, it's kind of weird for a Dean of Social Science, Accounting, Econ, and Human Services to be a world language content expert. However, I have been a teacher since the mid-90s, and I was the first one to have taken my French program online when online was not even considered a thing. So it developed over the time, and I also helped the Spanish instructors to take their program online at SFCC. But what's more interesting and more apropos for this is that one of my program lead, Corinne Moreau. Corinne, are you there? I thought I saw you. She's my program lead for the interpreters training program. She teaches ASL on ground and online. And I asked her to join us so she could help us with more current technology questions and or practices.
Elodie, thank you so much. Alyssa, I'm sorry, I didn't also ask you, would you like to say anything before we get started?
Hi, this is Alyssa. Yeah, I'm just really excited to be here and to learn more about what you all teach and how you teach it. And I'm super excited to have the ASL interpreters here today because this is the first time I've seen this live in action in a meeting. So I'm really excited about it.
And I pre-apologize for any lack of grace in my own learning curve around this. So thanks so much for your patience.
Oh, Jen, you're doing great.
So we wanted to take a second and just talk for a second about communities of practice, which is the professional development model the State Board is using to support faculty during this time. We really want you to feel the solitude, the solace, the comfort, the inspiration in community as we learn from and with each other. And these are unprecedented times. So we know that while there's a lot of people who have already been teaching online and done some really robust work, that there are also new challenges given everyone is fully online. Students have limited access. A lot of students are being put into online learning when they didn't sign up for this. So we understand that instructional resources might look a little different right now. And so in that, no one has to reinvent the wheel, and that as we share our instructional resources with each other. So today, typically what we do is we ask people to just type in the biggest concern, problem, issue, question, or challenge they have, what's keeping them awake at night. And for this session, due to the faculty instructional leadership from Elodie, we actually did a survey. So we're actually going to share with you what's keeping either you or your fellow colleagues awake at night. And while we're doing that, I would encourage you, if you don't see yours represented in what I'm going to go over, please type it into the chat. So your biggest concern, problem, issue, question, or challenge about teaching world languages during the pandemic. What's keeping you awake at night?
And Jen, while we're doing that, Elodie had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Elodie.
No, that's all right.
Oh, thank you, Alyssa. I was actually going to suggest that we click on the participants, the little icon on the bottom, so that it opens on the right side of the screen. And if people have questions, they could raise their hand, lower their hands, or whatever. That would be easier to moderate the question asking for our interpreters as well.
Excellent suggestion. So Elodie, thank you. So as Elodie said, click on participants, and then there's an option to raise your hand. Elodie, thank you. All right, so we really wanted to do breakout rooms today. And this is, so one of the things that we asked is, how would you like to be put into breakout rooms? And so people, we were trying to decide if it would be helpful if, people who teach the same language as me or people struggling with the same issue as me. And as you can see, it's kind of evenly split between the two. So that kind of left us a little bit at a loss for pre-setting up breakout rooms in a way that would be most useful for the group. So I think we're still open to doing breakout rooms today, but we might want to stay in the big group, given just that this is my first time hosting with interpreters, and I want to make sure that, I just want to make sure everybody has access to what we're talking about. So we also wanted to know the primary language that you teach. So it looks like the majority of you are primarily teaching the Romance languages, but obviously there's some of you who are teaching other languages. And then for the secondary language that you teach, again, it looks like many of you are teaching more than one language, and here's where there's more variation. So we also put together a survey, or on this survey, we also, so on this link right now this is all of the, this is all of the core themes. This is all of the content from the survey. And Alyssa, I'm wondering, we've put the link to the slide into the chat. And so you can see this, and I recognize that when I click on links and go out of the slide deck, it kind of messes up the view. So I'm wondering if everyone can access that link so you can see what people said. And I will just say that the top thing that people struggled with is how to engage and motivate students. The second most popular was how to assess student learning. And there were questions about formative assessment, questions about summative assessment, and questions about testing. Lots of questions around resources. And then finally, how to help students practice speaking was a sub-thread that a lot of people had questions about. And finally, there is a list of other topics that I think could almost be, you could almost devote an entire meeting just to discussing. And so I'm going to pause there for a moment and just say, Alyssa, I know things are happening in the chat. Do you want to, can you fill me in on what's going on in the chat?
Hey, Jen. Yeah, lots of people saying hello to each other. I did put the slide deck link back in per Shannon's request, so that's there. Wendy made a suggestion that we entertain doing breakout groups 2 different ways. One by topic and then another by language. So that was an idea that went into the chat. Couple of people talking about, you know, what they're teaching. Jennifer McCarthy says teaching German. Not seeing a lot of other things in here. I'm curious personally, because we didn't give a lot of instruction at the beginning, if everyone has found the chat. So when we go into the slide view, when Jen pops the slides up for everyone to see, it normally pushes participants into like a full screen view. And from there, you're not able to see like the participants panel in the chat. So if you don't want to be in that full screen view, you can hit the escape key on your keyboard, and that will pop you into a little bit smaller view, where if you use the menu that runs across the bottom of Zoom, you can do like what Ality said and click on the participants panel, and then there's another one for chat, and you can have both of those up on the right hand side of the screen so that you can see everything all at once. Like right now I see the slides, I see the captions from Jen, I have one of the interpreters pinned because I was curious, and then I also have the chat and the participants up. So maybe we should practice finding the chat. I'm not sure, Jen, whatever you think is most helpful. I'm just not seeing a lot of activity in the chat, so thought we might want to pause there and just give some instruction on that.
Yeah, why don't we have everybody practice typing into the chat? And I think it would be helpful if everybody could write in, of these 5, well, these 4 top themes, which one are you most excited about discussing?
Okay, seeing lots of votes for number 1 coming up. Actually, that's all I've seen. Okay, 1 for 3 and 4. Another 1 for 1. I think just judging what's come in the quickest, we have the most votes for pursuing the first question.
Okay. And I think my second question is, I'll just be vulnerable and transparent and say, I feel a little uncomfortable doing breakout rooms with the first time I'm doing Zoom live with interpreters. And so just to be respectful to that, I'm wondering if we feel comfortable having a large group chat about number 1 as the first move we'll make collectively.
Yep, Jen, I think that sounds totally fine.
Awesome.
And maybe at the end, maybe if our interpreters could stick around for a minute, we could do a practice with the breakout rooms just so that we will be able to do this next time.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
So right now I'd like to go to this document. And again, the link to this document is in the slide deck. So there were lots of different ways that people talked about this: community building, engagement, participation, and one person asked about differentiation. So as you can see, people were wondering, how do I meet individual student needs, best practices to improve the sense of community, best resources and strategies to foster more engagement and attendance. And also there were some specific problems of practice. So one person wrote, I feel like I'm alone. Everyone else is having amazing Zoom sessions. Students are missing chats or conferences. There's a low attendance on Zoom, so maybe just close the sessions. There's a lack of class interaction. And someone asked, how can I overcome limited direct communication? So Elodie, as our faculty lead, I'm wondering if you could start with how do you create motivation, encouragement, participation, community? So if Elodie, you could begin, and then if people could raise their hands, and then Alyssa and I will call on you. And does that sound okay?
Jen, I think that sounds great. One thing I'm wondering is when we transitioned over to the document, we lost the captions.
Oh, I'll go back.
I'm wondering if you want to stay into the slide deck so that the captions are working for everyone.
Yes.
And we can just kind of maybe individually refer to the document.
That sounds great. Perfect.
And Ray says, and this the interpreter, Ray says, the closed caption, is they just specifically for me, or are they for everybody who might watch? Because if just for me, I probably don't need them.
Oh, you know, actually they were for everybody. So I'll keep them up just to practice. And Ray, thank you for that.
Okay. Great, that's just fine. Thank you.
So we're discussing how to engage and motivate students, and Elodie Goodman is going to kick us off.
Well, I'm going to start with a question. Is anyone teaching synchronously?
And you can either type into the chat, or if you want to use the yes or no buttons on the participants panel, that's another way that you can answer the question as well.
Or raise your hand or give a thumbs up as well.
Yep.
Partially yes, yes, no.
We've got one hand up in the participants panel. And lots of yeses.
Okay, so there are also videos. So when I was teaching French, the only way for me to make sure that they were engaged and kept motivated, because it's a brand new learning that they're doing. Learning a foreign language is one, and learning how to learn online was another one. So what I had to do was I surveyed the students to make sure that I would not schedule meetings for them where they would be working. So I would have several meetings. So for instance, French 121, I would have early mornings and late afternoons and sometimes on the weekend, but that would be at least 5 hours a day that I had different settings of a room where the students would drop in and speak with me in French. So they would be going through a lesson, which were recorded videos, whether through Panopto. We didn't have Panopto when I was teaching, sorry. So we made our own videos, which we embedded into YouTube and put into the LMS. So they would learn the lesson, learn the vocabulary using the an electronic, digital vocab card. So once they learn all of that, they would come either in the morning, afternoon, or weekend or evening to practice the conversation with me. And when we did that, we noticed that we retained the students more. It doesn't hurt also to play live music, to show some of the elements of the grammar or vocab that we're teaching. I'm going to stop right there just to make sure that there are no questions or other ideas to be added.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so I think
Okay.
you're good.
I
Oh wait,
hate,
nope. There is a comment from Corinne. It
okay.
was just a little further back.
Yes.
Corinne says lots of short Panopto
Yes.
videos
Mhm.
on specific subjects. The other idea, daily announcements,
Mhm.
emailing students individually, and much
Mhm.
encouragement and feedback.
Yes. And the encouragement is one of the biggest thing, encouragement and immediate feedback. If you give them an assignment and you wait too long to give them any feedback, they're going to be disengaged. Are we all on Canvas? I hope we all are.
I think all 34 colleges are using Canvas.
Oh, great.
Yeah, as far as I know.
Oh, great, because that is the best way to monitor those students who are not engaged. Because you can go in there, look at the analytics, and pinpoint those students who have not been interacting with the Canvas, if that's where you house your program, and send them an individualized email. And the way I did it was I recorded myself, whether by video or a just a voice. The reason I did that was I had several students who came from a culture that was mostly oral traditions. So for them to go online and read and read and read and read, that's what disconnected them. So seeing a video where they can watch me, whether live or not, or listen to me was one of the ways that we engage the students, especially in a modern foreign second language. I'd like to ask if Corinne, you could share something about the ASL as well, because that's another way of practicing, which is voiceless. And I think that is very important for our group here today. Corinne?
Sure. This is Corinne. We do a lot of videos, Panopto videos, in which we sign the entire short lecture so the students can see us signing. We give them the topic so they know what it is that we're doing. And sometimes we'll do readings ahead of time, and then our videos will be a follow-up to that. So they know what the topic is, they understand the—
Corinne, this is Ray speaking. I'm so sorry. Do you teach ESL or ASL?
ASL.
Race is great. Okay. Because that way I know, I just was wondering what you taught. So, yeah.
Absolutely, for sure. And I think it's really good to give them things ahead of time that they can understand the new vocabulary through the reading, and then they see it in lecture. And then we follow up with things like discussion boards so that we can talk about that. And we have one weekly meeting where we then discuss that week's material so that they have opportunity to ask questions.
Thank you, Corinne. When I was teaching, Panopto was not in use, so I had to find a way to help my students watch the video ahead of time and make sure that they did not just watch the video, walked away, watch the video, walked away. So I used Edpuzzle at the time, but I believe Panopto has the same capability now, Alyssa?
That is correct. And I did put a link to the Panopto help page, and there's a video in there you can watch so you can see how to do that. So I put that into the chat for everybody already. And I have used Edpuzzle too, and I like that one.
I love Edpuzzle. It's free and it's easy to use. So I would build a presentation and I would do my lecture as if I were in a classroom. And then I would stop after I had gotten over a very important point, and I would say, well, what's the conjugation of the first person je and to eat, manger in French? And they cannot fast forward unless they respond. I think we give them 3 tries at the time, and then if after the third try they don't get it, I would have a little note that say, please go back to the beginning of the video and watch that again. This will help you be successful when you come and talk to me today about what you eat on a daily basis. So everything that we do is engaging the student. If you are like me where you have to do a PowerPoint presentation training, and if you're not engaged, you're not learning. You're not motivated. You just want to click play and walk away. Not that I do that. But to engage the student, you yourself have to be absolutely engaged, and you have to model that behavior as well. So I reach out to the student in several ways, mostly via the Canvas shell, because that is the way that is the safest. Nothing goes into the spam. And I monitor my emails, or I can in Canvas to have them sent to my email to know that, hey, go check your emails. Because if you miss an email from a student, it's almost like the end of the world if you don't answer within an hour. But then in your syllabus, make sure that you put a note saying that you are also trying to take care of yourself in this time of physical separation. And you would also need some time away from the computer to recuperate. Therefore, don't panic if you don't hear from me from Friday evening to Monday morning. You do need to set very clear boundaries so that they know and they don't panic. The panic is the worst part.
Elodie,
Oui?
this is
Yes?
Jen. Hello. Thank you so much. This is awesome. And I just wanted to say really quickly that, so Jennifer McCarthy has her hand up. And so Jennifer, I see you. It also looks like Diamond has some experience building quizzes in Panopto that people would maybe like to hear about. And also it looks like there's a trend coming up of people who are feeling like they're caught on what I would call the hamster treadmill of assessment and content creation, and that people feel like they're really being overworked right now, feeling overworked. So, and I was just trying to see what else was showing up in the chat about, like, a couple people are talking about Studio, which is like Edpuzzle. So I'm just wondering, would it be useful for Diamond possibly to share about using Panopto quizzes, and then maybe Jennifer with your hand raised? Does that seem okay? Diamond.
Yeah, sure. Hi, this is Diamond speaking.
I'm so sorry. The interpreters are going to switch. Just one moment. Thank you.
Oh, of course.
Thank you.
I'm still looking for Janine on the screen here. Just one moment.
This is for perfect. Please take your time.
Okay, we're good. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. All right, Diamond.
Hello, everyone. Diamond speaking here. I have used the Panopto quiz feature very much like Elodie mentioned. The concern is building a short lecture and then having students not watch it. So through Panopto, Alyssa was kind enough to add the help link in there. You can record the video as you've always done through Panopto, and you can go back later on and edit it by adding in quiz questions. These quiz questions are limited, but they will force the student to stop watching the video at that point, answer the question before they can continue on. And our e-learning department at CCS has done some really good training on that if anybody wants more information there.
Diamond, thank you. Is there anyone who has questions for Diamond just based on what she said?
I will pop in and say that these can also be populated automatically to the gradebook. So I have a small percentage of the class. The grading is, online lectures and responses, a small percentage. So those students have to move through those, and that counts in lieu of attendance for online classes.
Nice.
Thank you. And Jennifer, who had your hand raised.
Hi, I did have my hand raised. I was curious about Elodie's. I'm trying to turn my video on. There we go. I'm curious about Elodie's statement that she would spend 5 hours a day making herself available online, or rather, yeah, sounds like synchronously. And I just feel like that's a lot of time. And I was curious a little bit to hear more about that.
Jennifer, thank you for asking that. I would not do 5 hours a day. That would be ridiculous. But I would do at least 3 hours a day, because I was teaching 3 different classes.
Right.
And one of my class was actually clustered with 121, 122, and 123. All 3 levels in one class. So I had to divide when the 1-2 time or when the 122 would come up and practice. So 5 hours is the best for a week, especially for the beginners. For the beginners, 121. When the 122 come after having taken 121, you can lower the amount of hours that you can dedicate to them to 4 hours. And then when they get to 123, I noticed that they need less regular check-in, but longer time available for discussion. So discussion would do dialogues, they would do plays. So you would, of course, the no matter what the language is, you can use some real drama pieces. I think that's what's called in English. Some drama pieces, dialogues, or whatever. Skits. Si, merci, oui. Skits. And they would practice that with one another. So you could do a full 1 hour, let's do Cyrano de Bergerac's version of The Nose, and they would be divided into small groups where they would practice. I also want to mention another thing that we used to have, however, it's expensive, and I don't think that we could use it in such a short term, but if someone's interested, it's a great tool. It's called VoiceThread. And VoiceThread, yeah, Alyssa, do you know about that?
Oh, I've seen it used, and I've been a participant in it on a VoiceThread. They're pretty fun. They're kind of neat.
They're great, because in my second year French, we used VoiceThread because we did a global simulation. And global simulation is there's no English whatsoever. You're not American students. You're a bunch of circus artists and performers traveling through France. And as we travel through France, the group decides where in France we're going, and they have to build up almost like a speech. This is the town I want to go next because, and then they have to do the presentation through VoiceThread. So they could add pictures, they could add video. Other teammates, if they were so afraid of speaking alone, they could record it ahead of time as well. So VoiceThread is a very good tool to have, but there's a high learning curve, and it can also be integrated into Canvas, all the grading.
Wow.
So this is Jen speaking, and it looks like there are a couple people who would be very interested in VoiceThread. And I guess Alyssa, is there information at the state board level on VoiceThread?
There's not.
Okay.
I think it might be a case where there may be like a free instructor's version that you can use limited, and then you pay for a subscription. But Elodie, I see her shaking her head, so maybe it's just a paid subscription. I don't actually have my own subscription, but I've seen it, and I've worked in it before. So it's not like a tool that the state board has like a contract for or anything. So it'd be on your own.
Not yet.
So not yet. So I'm just looking at the time, and I'm wondering if the people who have posted into the chat around the assessment, the labor of assessment, I'm wondering if this is a good time for us to move into assessment. And again, on the document, there are specific concerns about formative assessment, summative assessment, and also just assessment questions in general. And so I am going to go to that document and just say, here's how people described assessment. So what are best practices to edit and to give feedback online? How do we give real-time feedback to students? What are some ways that people are doing that? Definitely for summative assessment, how to assess oral and writing skills, ways to assess students' oral proficiency, how do you monitor progress in class, how to assess handwriting Chinese characters, and again, like, how do you provide assessment, especially summative assessment, that actually assesses student knowledge and not their ability to find answers in the book? I think also there was a question about students translating online assignments. So Elodie, I'm gonna mute myself, go back to my slide deck and let you take it over. And then as folks have things to contribute, either type into the chat or raise your hand.
Okay, I'm gonna go to that Google Doc again just in case I missed something. Feedback on assignments. How many of our instructors in this group are actually using one of the textbooks from Pearson or some editor that has everything online? Couple of hands, not for Japanese. So when I have to tell you that when I taught French, I did not use a textbook. I built my own textbook for the first 2 years of French. So I did everything. I built everything from scratch basically, and the feedback was already integrated in the responses for the students individually. But as a teacher, I would go back and check who's done what. And based on that alone, I then created a meeting, or not meeting, a class, a 30 minutes class saying, I saw a lot of mistakes in one area. Let's meet together and let's discuss that and let's practice that. So it's very responsive to whatever the homework was of the night. So I think that's one of the questions. So feedback, what's faster is recording yourself and telling the student rather than type. Or if you prefer typing, make sure that you have a Word document where you cut and paste the responses that you would share, because you will see that it's the same one over and over, okay? Real-time feedback. For the writing, for the speaking, for the listening. Miss Renata has a question. I will stop.
Thanks, Elodie. Renata, we saw you had your hand raised. So if you want to go ahead and either ask your question or offer what you wanted to say.
No, I just said that, yes, I was using a book that had online components. I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. Don't be. This is great. This is great. Thank you.
you.
Yeah, thank you. Elodie, go ahead.
Thank you. If you're using a textbook that has all the homework with fill in the blanks or self-corrected, that's great. You can actually go in and look at what the most common mistake is and then develop a short review on that, whether in person via Panopto with the quiz embedded in it to help the students practice. But if you are like myself and the ASL program that we have at SFCC, you develop your own. And if you teach French, I am more than happy to share with you whatever I have. It's a little bit dated. It's been 3 years since I've been in the classroom, but hey, you know what? It's free, so you can modify it as you wish. So for me, I design HTML exercises using hot potatoes. And it's not a free program, although you can use it for free. I bought the version because it's easier that way for me. The hot potatoes allow me to build fill in the blank, crossword puzzles, quizzes, all kinds of quizzes that I can embed in a Canvas shell. And the students can do them over and over and over again. I will stop to see if there are any questions when Jen smiles. I just want to make sure there's nothing there.
I was just smiling because I was just smiling because I'm happy, but I was also thinking that your offer to share your French resources, I know your colleague Erin Hubener also has created an open educational resources for Spanish. And yeah, and she also has exercises for the students to do. So I also wanted to put in a plug for her student developed OERs as well. I also wanted to say that it looks like Ariane said she's using Promenades for French. And Kelly Glisso is using Panorama or Portales for Spanish. And Andrew Snyder wrote, at one of the colleges I teach, I use a textbook, but at the other, I've been building things from scratch, and that he prefers it that way. And Andrew, I was kind of wondering if you could take the mic for a moment and just talk a little bit about what it's like to develop your own materials and why it's preferable.
Sure, no problem. I like being able to control a lot of the elements of the activity. And I don't really like a lot of the fill in the blank exercises, although they're easy to grade. The machine can grade itself. So I like that. But the fill in the blank to me just seems so unnatural and not an experience that a student will ever have in real life. Like no one will ever go out into the world and say, okay, now here's a paragraph and fill in every fifth word with the appropriate conjugation. So I think they're okay, and there's many advantages to them, but I prefer to do more information processing tasks, and I'm able to do that a lot more easily if I create them myself. So for instance, an ordering activity where students read a short passage and then put a similar, it's the same information but worded differently, and they have to put it in order that it appears in the paragraph, something like that. So that's my big thing. And I've been using Canvas for that, but I've also been using a program called H5P, and it's an open source learning platform where you can create different kinds of activities. One of which being drag and drop. So I really like that. Students can click on a sentence and drag it to order something. And then for grading something like that, since it doesn't integrate into Canvas unless you pay for it, I have them just take a screenshot of their completed quiz. It's something they can do over and over. It's more of a formative assignment than a summative assessment, but it's a really good tool.
Andrew, thank you so much. I see that Ginger has her hand raised. And I also saw that Shannon has some contribution to make in the chat, and also Diamond. So Ginger, could we start with you, and then Shannon, and then Diamond?
Sure. So this is Ginger Farrell. I teach French at North Seattle College. And I really, it really resonated with me what Andrew said about wanting to create exercises that are more engaging in a sense. It's a lot of work though. That's what I've been faced with, is do I adopt this online platform, you know, or do I kind of get in and do some of the work that it's more interesting from my point of view. And so I'm at a point now because of the COVID-19 where I was forced to, of course, migrate like we all were online prior to having to make that hard decision. So I've been, and I'm using a book called Entre Nous, which is very communicative. You have to go in and choose which roommate you want to live with, or which hotel are you going to stay in, and you have to say why. And it's a bit of problem solving, and I found that that really helps with the student engagement overall.
I just want to say really quickly that I love that we're covering all the bases at once, because also I love that we're also sharing resources. Where the assessment ecologies is my new favorite metaphor, the artifacts of our teaching. So thank you. And Ginger, if you haven't already, could you type that into the chat, your source? That would be awesome. And Shannon.
Excuse me, just one moment. This
of
is
course.
Janine, the interpreter. We're going to take just a moment to switch.
Yes, absolutely.
Janine, how long do you need? Is it always every 15 minutes that you switch over? This is a question for the interpreters, not for Ray.
Can you hear me still?
Yes.
Okay. Ray's saying every 15 to 20 depends on the content. But it's usually a natural break, okay? We'll go ahead and Tracy's on now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Shannon?
Oh, I don't have really much more to add than I put in there, but my English as a second language classes have been online for quite a while now, and so assessments is always a place I'm looking to beef up. But I will say consistently, quarter over quarter, the place that I get the most positive feedback, and they ask me for more, as much as I'm willing to make for them, is when you do quizzes where you're doing multiple choice or matching or true false, providing that preloaded feedback to them for why an answer is incorrect or why it is correct.
Yes.
They love it. And so every single time across the board, that is the piece in my surveys that is spoken about the most. It takes a lot of time to go in and build them, like the initial time, but then of course it's there, from there on out. Because I do agree, I really do try and also create more engaging real world activities where they're not just having to always come up with just the one word missing or fill in the gap or just a simple response. But for when you do those, that has been very successful for me.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Shannon. Diamond?
Hi there, this is Diamond again. I just wanted to encourage, if anybody has a resource person at their campus that deals with TILT, teaching and transparency in learning and teaching, that's a great resource to help fix a few assessments that you find, hey, students are copying and pasting, or students are just finding the answers from the textbook. I found a lot of success by tilting some of my activities. And then for the French teachers out there, Erin Hubner's Spanish textbook, I have converted into a French textbook, so it's still in the works. It's not really quite usable yet because I'm still in the process of working through some kinks, but I do have some good resources for French if anybody is really urgently needing some stuff that's pre-populated. I have quite a bit on Canvas and would be happy to share person to person. Like I said, it's not quite ready to go to the big world yet, but.
Diamond, thank you so much. And for those of you who don't know me, I am a big tilt aficionado. So if anybody wants any sort of help with tilting, I would be delighted as well. So I think actually this leads us, I think, to kind of some next steps with this group. So I think the thing that our proposed next steps are do we want to have future meetings synchronously via Zoom? And I think given the size of this group, I'm also wondering if we want to split into smaller groups, like now that we know, like French, Spanish, ASL, do we want to split into smaller groups? Do we want to have like one big meeting and then split into breakout rooms? Or do we want to have just separate meetings? And the other thing, for the STEM communities of practice, we've been creating Canvas shells. So then what we found works is if people upload what they want to share to the Canvas Commons and then link to it through that Canvas shell so that people can share resources. So for example, Diamond and Elodie both generously offering to share their materials, having one Canvas shell to share resources is really useful. So I think maybe what I'd love to know is, would you like to meet again? If you could either give me a thumbs up as Corinne is doing, or also type into the chat just a yes, or no, thank you.
Yep, you're getting lots of yeses, Jen.
Oh, great. Okay, cool. This document. Most of you, I think, are already on this document, but this is how we will stay in touch with you. This is how we'll send you the Outlook invites. So if your name is not on this document, please make sure that your name is on it. And we will also, actually, I think we have our meetings pre-populated. Now I'm catching up with myself. So Jackie Epler-Clark has already scheduled our meetings. So I think for our next meeting, we barely made it through our topics of our assessment ecology. So I think obviously there's a lot more to dive into about resources and also how to help students practice speaking. So I think we've got a pretty solid agenda for future ongoing meetings. But I think it would be helpful for Elodie, Alyssa, and I, if you do have a specific request, to just shoot us a quick email and just let us know, because there's so much we could talk about. So I want to say thank you to our interpreters. It's been very lovely having you here. Thank you very much. And I want to say thanks to Elodie for being our faculty lead and helping us think through how to run this meeting, and also for offering her wisdom and expertise. And I want to thank all of you for taking valuable time out of your day to be with us today. I hope it was useful. And I look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks. And I will stop the recording if I remember how.